somehow new tools would allow an individual to push a button and generate a hit and market a hit and bring it to many millions of consumers around the world. It's a laughable notion. Nintendo's also doing just fine. Like, don't worry about Nintendo. I don't think you're going to be having a benefit dinner for Nintendo anytime soon. If you have a console and you're over 17, just explain to me, how is it that you've decided, no, GTA 6, not interested. I just don't see it.
Hello and welcome to the Game Business Show. Today we have a huge interview for you. It's with Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick. Take-Two, of course, being the parent company of 2K and Rockstar, and they've got a big year this year because, of course, on November 19th, Grand Theft Auto 6 is due for release. But this conversation, it isn't particularly about Grand Theft Auto. You see, every 3 months around Take-Two's financials, I get to have a quick chat with Strauss about their numbers. And sometimes he says something that catches me by surprise, and that's what happened last time. During our last chat in February, I asked him about AI. Specifically, I asked him about Google's Project Genie, which allows people to create very short GTA-like experiences through text and image prompts. The introduction of Project Genie caused Take-Two's share price to drop as investors were spooked by the concept of it. I asked Strauss how he felt about it. I expect him to be dismissive. He's been somewhat skeptical of AI in the past, or at least he appeared to be. But he wasn't dismissive. In fact, he saw it as an opportunity, not a problem. I'm going to read out his full quote. He said, "This company was built on the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence. All video games are created almost entirely in computers, and we embrace technology. We have hundreds of AI pilots and implementations going on right now across our company, including our labels. And we're really enthusiastic about what this new technology can mean. From one point of view, I'm surprised about the market reaction because I've been optimistic about all things in AI since the question came up a couple of years ago. That is how we're built. That's where we started. Innovation is one of our core tenets. Our 3-part strategy to be the most creative, the most innovative, and the most efficient company in the business. And the innovation surrounding AI is definitely driving efficiencies. And we think can also drive creativity because as tools get better, our teams can do cooler and cooler things. I'm even more optimistic than I've ever been, and I thought the release, that's the Google Project Genie release, was a great sign of things to come." Well, I wanted to get into that, but the financial results, that's not the time to get into anything. So instead, I asked if we could do a follow-up, and Take-Two agreed. Now, this interview isn't all about AI. We also talk about succeeding in new territories, the impacts of Roblox, the aging gaming audience, and how that affects games like GTA and BioShock, in-game advertising, the mobile market in the West, the DRAM crisis, and a whole lot more. But that's enough introduction. Let's get to the interview. Here is my chat with Strauss Zelnick. Hello, Strauss. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Very nice to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
I've had a lot of analysts and some of your peers on the show recently, and I said to them that I've got Strauss coming on, and I asked, do you have any questions for him? Do you want anything to ask him? Every single one of them was about GTA 6.
Well, we're certainly grateful for the attention.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to ask any of those because I know what the answers will be. There's almost no point in asking them. But it's really fascinating because obviously there's such huge expectation from fans, which you have to deal with. But to have this from the industry as well, it's quite something, I think. Well, thank you for joining us today. I actually wanted to talk about a subject we briefly talked about last month, which is on AI. Because I asked you during your financial call about Google's Project Genie in particular, and you called it a great sign of things to come, which surprised me actually. I'd imagined you might be a bit more skeptical about it. So I'm going to start with a sort of general question, just to get a better understanding of it. What opportunity do you see for AI to affect the games industry, including obviously Take-Two, in the sort of near term, the long term, and the long term?
Look, the history of our industry is that we've always used technology to create great entertainment. Mm-hmm. This has always been a digital business, and the bulk of the work that our teams do obviously is done in and with computers. So an advance in technology that allows us to do things better and quicker is great for us. And I was kind of stunned by the market's reaction, because the market's reaction was somehow seeing it as a threat to what we do, when it's quite obvious that creation tools are beneficial for our industry. I think the notion of the bear case for big entertainment companies is somehow that AI tools will mean everyone can create hits, kind of doesn't stand to reason. These tools may help you create assets, but that won't help you create hits. There are loads of assets out there now. I mean, it doesn't matter if you push a button to create an asset or it takes you 6 weeks. At the end of the day, you have an asset. And thousands of mobile games are launched every year, and there are a handful of hits. And in the last couple of years, most of them have come from Zynga, division of Take-Two. Mm-hmm. Equally, sure, you can create assets that might look like a big release. It might look like NBA 2K or EAFC or Red Dead Redemption. But creating a hit of that magnitude is a completely different animal and does require human engagement, does require human creativity.
Well, come back to that, I think, because I mean, when you're the way you sort of view AI is you talk about their sort of making things faster. Is that the end goal for this technology from your point of view? Is it about shorter dev times and smaller budgets?
Okay. The end goal is making the best entertainment on earth, engaging consumers. That's our mission. We have a 3-part strategy to pursue that mission, which is be the most creative, mm-hmm. be the most innovative, and be the most efficient. So if we can innovate and enhance efficiency, that's terrific. It's a big part of what we do. But our mission is to create the best entertainment on earth and to bring it to consumers wherever they are. And technology can assist with that mission. But technology on its own will not replace the fulfillment of that mission.
I'm in a different field. I'm in the media field, and there's loads of AI tools in the media field. And a lot of it allows me to do things a little better, or not better is not the word. In fact, quite the opposite to that. It allows me to do things a little bit faster, but all the tools aren't as good as if I did it myself, or, and it requires my expertise in order to make the most of those things, which I think is what you were saying in your answer before. The experience I've had of it is it's a speed thing. It allows you to do things faster and move fast. Games are taking so much longer to make. Can this help in that kind of field? I'm not necessarily, and maybe I'm in a different field. I'm not necessarily seeing a quality bar go up as a result of these tools.
No, but again, we're asking the wrong question if we expect a quality bar to go up. But for example, even today, could you use AI tools more quickly to storyboard or to help you tease out plot points or tease out alternatives? Sure, because these tools are based on massive data sets that are searchable and translatable into natural language. And that's just more effective than the tools we've had before, like doing an internet search. But ultimately, it's the same thing. So it all depends on your expectations. No one ever added value with a PowerPoint presentation. Nonetheless, lots of them are made all the time. If you could reduce the amount of time you spend on a PowerPoint presentation and still have a good PowerPoint presentation, like, hallelujah, that's phenomenal. But no one's saying, like, that's great, Chris, we're going to give you a big promotion because of the amazing PowerPoint you did for the internal committee. Like, that's not what we get paid for. What we get paid for is making the best entertainment on earth. And that requires all kinds of things that technology cannot and will never do on its own.
Is this what the investors and the people, is this what they're not taking into consideration when they're looking at AI?
Yeah, I think this is where the point is being missed.
Yeah. Is there anything about what they're afraid of that concerns are they valid? Aren't we into a situation where, doesn't it level the playing field to a degree?
I mean, not even the littlest bit. As I said, like, there's already plenty of technology out there that allow people to create video games. And as a result, thousands of video games are created every year. And yet the hits all cluster among the large entertainment companies almost entirely, and now and then an indie, which is generally speaking well-funded and pretty robust in and of itself. But the notion that somehow new tools would allow an individual to push a button and generate a hit and market a hit and bring it to, many millions of consumers around the world, it's a laughable notion. It's just never been the case with entertainment. And certainly there are other entertainment businesses that are technically less robust than interactive entertainment, for example, music. And right now there are programs that allow you to, put in a prompt and get a professionally, recorded song spit back out at you. And it sounds like a song, but I defy you to listen to it more than once.
Yeah.
It'd be great to send as a greeting card to your partner on their birthday, but that's about it.
I'm probably not buying tickets to see an AI artist.
Right. But look, we've been talking about this forever in the entertainment business, and as someone who's been around forever, for better or for worse, there is a creator economy that these tools have enabled, no doubt. But that creator economy stands alongside the professional entertainment economy. It doesn't supplant it. It doesn't replace it. And the history of the entertainment business is, as new technologies come along that enable new activities, they stand alongside the pre-existing businesses. So, I used to give as an example that the only entertainment business that was ever wiped out by new technology in the history of entertainment, electronic entertainment, which is since 1895, and I'm a student of that business, was vaudeville. But now I could argue that vaudeville hasn't exactly been wiped out. We're in the golden age of live entertainment. My son's a comedian. I just went to see him perform in front of thousands of people in Boston on Saturday night. I mean, how is that different from vaudeville? It's exactly the same thing. There are far more people watching today and attending today than in the 1920s and the 19-teens. So every entertainment business that was supposed to be destroyed by new technology driving new forms of entertainment hasn't been.
Where do you feel AI is going to have the most significant impact?
I think it will have an enormous impact across all industries in terms of making mundane office work essentially more efficient or unnecessary.
Do you have any concerns around it at all? Is there anything that's...
No, if you're talking about evil machines, like I don't believe machines think, and I don't believe machines have the ability to be good or evil. And anyone who knows anything about digital machinery, like at the end of the day, realizes that. Or as the CEO of Boston Dynamics, a robotics company, said, we do build these things with an off switch for a reason.
Well, I'll give you my concern around it. I don't have too much concern, really. I think there's a lot of positives around it. And I talked about some of the things that I can do, why you can use AI and machine learning tools to do. Like, for example, this video recording now, it will transcribe it for me, and there is, if I wanted to, and I didn't, but if I wanted to, I could Google, what questions should I ask Strauss Zelnick?
And it might prompt you to come up with some things you wouldn't have thought of.
And but it needs my expertise, because the questions will inevitably, I've tried it once before, the questions are, actually that's not a good question, and because I know I've been doing it for 20 years, I can bring myself to that and go, those questions aren't good, that transcription needs this work, those clips.
You also can use it to summarize the discussion. For example, if someone said, well, give me sort of the core points, then you can use AI to summarize it, also valuable.
But where my slight concern is the next generation, because I've got that expertise built over 20 years of doing it by hand. When you've given these tools to the next generation of people coming in, they may not have that expertise to know those questions aren't very good, or know this is probably not the best way of doing things, because they haven't yet developed those skills. And I think that puts a bit of pressure on education and possibly my generation and other, to make sure that we are passing on those trainings, because I worry that there's going to be less being able to do that on the job than perhaps there used to be in previous eras. That's my concern around AI. It's quite a specific one.
Perhaps, but I think there'll be different forms of training. And I just read an article that took the position that because of digital technology, people are dumber today than they were 10 years ago. I just don't buy that. I don't think it's true at all. When I was a little kid, calculators came along, and parents were all up in arms that now schools would not teach kids math because they had access to calculators. Well, it turns out people are learning math today, even though there are calculators.
I hope you're right. Well, let's move on from AI.
I'm an optimist.
Well, and history seems to point in these directions that it tends to be a positive.
Technology is almost always a positive. And look, there are detriments as well. So I don't know. We've greatly benefited from nuclear technology in so many ways, and we've also had horrific uses of nuclear technology in the Second World War. Thank God, not since then. Knock wood.
Yeah, I sometimes think the internet might have been a mistake as well.
I don't know. I think it's really largely a benefit, and you can moan about the effects of social media, but media's been around for a long time. And our grandparents moaned about jazz music. Or great grandparents, we seem to have survived that. Parents, parents rock and roll music, or grandparents, in my case, grandparents, and then parents about hip hop music. And here we are, we're all fine. We're all just fine. we survive.
Well, let's move on a little bit from AI, because we recently had Matthew Ball on the show, and we discussed all sorts of topics around his latest reports. And some of it I thought, actually, I'd be interested to get your views on. And one of the things is around this next generation of gamers coming through. You touched upon sort of creator economies emerging perhaps in games. And obviously Roblox is this big thing that millions, hundreds of millions of young people are playing at the moment. I guess it's a weird way of phrasing the question, but are you confident they'll migrate to more traditional games and platforms in the way that previous generations have?
Some will, some won't. I mean, there's no argument that just because you're a user of Roblox, you'll suddenly become a user of something else. I mean, our thesis is not based on that. But I do believe that people who are engaged in interactive entertainment as creators are probably more likely to be users than someone who's not engaged. Anytime people worry, incidentally, just doubling back for a moment on your AI questions, that somehow AI tools means that there's a creator economy, means that there's no professional economy. This has already been tested by Roblox. Roblox is already a really big company with lots of people really engaged. And yet, we're selling more games, mobile and console, than ever before.
I do sometimes read some comments around Roblox as a big challenge for Nintendo, for instance.
Nintendo's also doing just fine. Like,
it's doing just fine. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to be having a benefit dinner for Nintendo anytime soon.
But on the other side of this question, because obviously we talk about where the next generation is and where they're coming from and what they're going to be playing, and that's always something that we all try to work out. But actually, I think people forget that this industry is still quite a young one, and that our older audiences are still, in their 40s, and a lot of them. And of course, your IPs, Take-Two's IPs, they sort of speak to that audience. And that audience today has different pressures than they did 10, 20 years ago. Consumers' time is being, increasingly taxed and divided among devices and experiences, but they've also got kids and they've got careers and all those things that they didn't have to worry about when GTA 3 came out, or even the first BioShock or whatever. Is that a conversation that you're having a lot with your labels and teams?
Look, many of our games appeal to all audiences. For example, our NBA game, our WWE game, our mobile games. Mm-hmm. Others of our games are specifically tailored at audiences that are 17 and above. For example, GTA. So we serve all audiences, and we market our products appropriately to the audience in question.
Yeah.
We tend around here to think in terms of making the greatest entertainment on earth. And in order to do that, we engage with the most creative people on earth and find a way to encourage them to work within our system. And then when they do work within our system, we give them unlimited resources and insist that they follow their passion. That's our recipe for success. We don't sit around and try to game like, who's, the way like Pillsbury does, like, who's our consumer? Why, it's Betty. Betty is 52 and she lives in Milwaukee and she has blonde hair and she makes a cake every Thursday night. Like, no, we don't do that. We say, hire the most creative people. Tell them, all we want you to do around here is pursue your passions. We're going to have a really rational environment. We're all going to be kind. We're going to work as a team. We're going to seek excellence. We're going to get out of your way, make the best entertainment on earth. We're good to go. And then you know what happens? More often than not, everyone shows up.
Yeah. I'm mindful of the fact that a lot of the people that in my world, not my gamer friends, but sort of my general friends, they're all excited about GTA 6, obviously. But when they played GTA 5, they were in their early 20s, and their time pressure is different.
Oh, I think we're going to have a lot of 17-year-olds playing GTA 6.
Well, yes, indeed.
I don't think there's any risk to be like, oh, yeah, I didn't play 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. I'm not showing up. To the contrary, I think,
yes,
I think we'll be able to engage every appropriate individual in GTA 6. Another way, if you have a console and you're over 17, just explain to me, how is it that you've decided, no, GTA 6, not interested. I just don't see it.
Okay, maybe that was a bad example.
You don't like to find success before it occurs.
Yeah, it's true. But I appreciate it was probably the worst example I could give. But it's just this idea of people aging out of games, and I'm
it's not happening. I mean, we stay engaged with the kind of entertainment we fell in love with at the age of 17. Mm-hmm. Think about it. The music, if I say to you, what kind of music do you like? like everyone else, you'll say, oh, I listen to everything. That just isn't true, incidentally. But if I say, okay, you're by yourself, you have an hour, and all you're going to do in this hour is listen to music, then I want you to have the best possible time and the most relaxing time. You will listen to the music you listened to at the age of 17. If you fell in love with video games at 17 and you're 40, guess what you still do? Play video games. That's why the cohort is continuing to grow as we age. That's why we have industry tailwinds. I know Matthew Ball doesn't really believe that, but our experience here at Take-Two is we are benefiting from industry tailwinds. Now, we only benefit to the extent we make something great, of course.
One of the things that I did talk to Matthew Ball about, and I know that I spoke to Frank Giroux about last year, actually, was emerging territories, you know, Southeast Asia, Middle East, sort of North Africa, Brazil, those sort of places. And because these are markets where the platforms are different, right? You know, they're not typically on console. They're often low-end Androids in a lot of places. Some of these markets are pre-monetization. But in order to target those markets and make the most of those markets, it sort of can be quite tricky to do that when you've got your high-end console users and those sort of titles. I'm interested in how you think about those markets. How do you think about them when it comes to the opportunity for Take-Two?
First of all, I love your phrase, pre-monetization. It's sort of like my kids. I'm going to try that sometime, pre-monetization. Look, we're very focused on developing markets. As you know, for the video game business today, the bulk of our revenue comes from the US, the UK, Western Europe, and a couple of countries in Asia, which is to say there's this massive population that loves interactive entertainment that we're not really serving. For example, India, and as you said, Africa. I would argue we underserve the Middle East. We certainly underserve much of Asia. We underserve Latin America. And we need to change that. One of the ways we have to do it is localize, which costs us money, which requires us to invest. And the other thing that we have to do is create distribution partnerships, largely for mobile. We also have to support streaming services that make sense. And finally, we have to be willing to use our geo-pricing tool, and we have a proprietary geo-pricing tool, and take the risk that someone might use a VPN to circumvent our geo-pricing, which is a risk we will take in limited circumstances. I think that if you look at our numbers now, we run about 65-35-ish in favor of the US in terms of our revenue. It's certainly not true of population, with the US having a population of 330 million people. So as the world opens up technologically, and that on the console side, that means going more to PC, which is already becoming a much greater share of so-called console releases. On the mobile side, it means having technology that allows us to address less technologically advanced devices in developing markets. As those things occur, which they will both, and as the distribution models open up, either for regulatory reasons or commercial reasons or both, we have the opportunity to serve the rest of the world, and those numbers should really change. And I would guess in 10 years, if we do things right, the US is 20 to 25% of our business, and the rest is outside the US.
Oh, wow.
And obviously the scale of our business will grow materially.
Do you think you have to make any sacrifices so that your core, you know, when you're targeting devices that perhaps aren't as powerful, and you'll probably not be able to hit the level, the graphics bar perhaps you have in the past, and that is there a risk of alienating your core?
No, because wherever the technology exists to enjoy the material at the highest level of fidelity, we'll make that available.
We talked about mobile a little bit there. The mobile market in the West, certainly the data that's coming out of 2025, it does seem to appear to be stagnating. I don't know if you saw the comments from Supercell around their latest financials.
Not a Take-Two.
Well, I know.
We're up year over year materially.
How are you meeting that challenge then? How are you bucking the trend? I guess if I'm going to rephrase the question.
Well, let me not use a personal pronoun because it would be appropriate. Our teams at Zynga, led by Frank and other creative leaders in the company, are developing, delivering, and distributing more hits than anyone else. That's why. That's why we're doing well. And the minute we stop doing that, guess what? We'll stop doing well. We have great live services games, including legacy games like Toon Blast. It's been around for a long time. It continues to set records. Our Empires and Puzzles, Words with Friends, also setting records. And we have new titles like Match Factory and Color Block Jam. So, yeah, we have to do both. We have to run our legacy titles incredibly effectively and serve our loyal consumers, and we have to make great new hits. And our team is doing just that.
Okay. I'll also ask you the other question that came up with Matthew Ball was in-game advertising, because obviously in mobile it's now so big, it's worth almost the entirety of the PC console content revenue combined. But given that trend and the success you've had with ads and through your mobile games through Zynga, do you see an opportunity for advertising within the PC and console space?
Well, for free-to-play titles, yes. For titles for which you've paid 70 or 80 bucks, no.
No.
We have some limited advertising inside games like NBA 2K because that, it fits with the vernacular. You want to see advertising in an arena, in a stadium, because you would if you were there in real life. But that's not a big economic contributor.
No. I'm just interested in, I think Matthew was talking about the idea that, when you like watch Bridgerton or whatever on Netflix and you press pause, you might get an advert in the pause menu. I guess if you've not paid for the advertising level of Netflix. And I guess he was sort of talking about those opportunities, but I do think I think from what your answer suggests, you probably would be upsetting that core player that's come in at $70, $80.
Very difficult for me to believe that we would want to have interstitial advertising in a game that someone paid 70 or 80 bucks for. It would seem unfair.
I'll wrap up by asking a couple of topical questions, because we talk about the console space. We've spoken about it before. It seems to be a little challenged. PC's taking a bigger share of things. But obviously one of the big issues at the moment is this current crisis around RAM, DRAM and storage, and how it's impacting the hardware space, how it might impact things going forward. How much is that playing into your planning at the moment?
We don't see it affecting the delivery of consoles to the market.
I hope you're right. And also new is Asha Sharma has just been appointed the lead Xbox, which is great. She's new to the industry. She's not a gamer. And it's triggered a conversation around whether those things are important for the role. I mean, I think I know what you think about this, but what do you think? What do you think are the important things a CEO in video games should be concerned about?
Well, first of all, I don't think the newly appointed head of Xbox needs any advice from me. So let's just start there.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
There's a highly accomplished executive who's done just great.
Yeah.
Without ever having met me, I'm gonna bet on her continuing to do great. Moreover, I gotta focus on myself doing better before I, take pains to talk about other CEOs. With all that said, look, our recipe for success around here is be the most creative, be the most innovative, be the most efficient. And you'd want to study the dynamics of the business. And the individual you mentioned, in fact, has operated successfully in any number of different businesses. So I can't imagine she wouldn't be examining the underlying dynamics of the business and then, lean into them. But at the end of the day, what drives success in our business is making the best entertainment. The rest does tend to take care of itself. I used to say when I was in the movie business long ago, when I first became president of Fox, my job as president of Fox initially, although it changed, was I was just responsible for the business side of the equation. My boss, when I first got there, was the chairman of the studio named Joe Roth. He was responsible for the creative side of the equation. So there were a couple of things that came out of that. The first was people would say, so what's it like being president of 20th Century Fox? I said, well, here's what it's like to be chairman of 20th Century Fox, which is not my job. The chairman of 20th Century Fox gets to say yes 25 times a year. The president of 20th Century Fox gets to say no 10,000 times a year. That's the difference in our jobs. But not the point. What I used to say about success is if I did my job well, running the business side, and Joe did his job poorly, running the creative side, we would fail. If he did his job well on the creative side and I did my job poorly on the business side, we would succeed. And if we both did our jobs well, we would succeed mightily. And, we did, thankfully. We were number one at the box office for 3 out of the 4 years we were together there as a team. But the truth is that hits cure all ills. And in the absence of making hits, you won't have a successful entertainment business. So that's the thing to focus on. Now, here at Take-Two, we try to do all of the above. We try to run an amazing creative enterprise, and we try to run a highly rational, highly effective business enterprise. Sometimes we get it wrong, but that's what we try to do.
Strauss, I'm aware that I run out of time, but I always love talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to what should be an exciting year ahead.
Me too. Take care.
That's it for the